Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me how. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, let's do it now. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, you're the one that makes fishing so much fun. Well, hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what I need to raise a big old honking moss back. Line breaking, tack tearing up moss back. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
I bet you're getting ready to build a lake. Well, here's some tips for you to think about as you get ready to go through that endeavor, because it's going to be a lot of processes and a lot of thinking. Right over my shoulder is a perfect example of how to create the best habitat. And this video is going to be coaching you up on how to build the best habitat to take care of the different species of fish that you want to grow to be giant monsters. You got to keep in mind, you got to have little room for little bitty fish, places for medium-sized fish, as well as those big giant beasts that you want to grow. So go with us on this journey through this video to teach you a little bit about how to create a habitat plan, underwater communities, and things that will attract fish and grow big fish in your lake.
You know, with 40 plus years as a private sector fisheries biologist under my belt, I've seen a lot, been able to do quite a few things. I've watched people build new lakes and coached people about building new lakes. I've seen things that work and things that don't. I've seen things that people should do and things people shouldn't do. My first piece of advice is to work with what nature has to offer. Be sure and flag the shoreline of your new lake and then see what's going on from the water line down and then begin to enhance it. If you've got rocks on site, build rock piles. Can you make some sheer cutoffs down in water 6 or 7 feet deep? What about underwater islands? If you got a lot of timber, let's use timber. Gravel down in the creek bed, let's dig it up and use it for spawning beds. So there's so many things out there that you can do. You just got to figure out what you can do and what you should do that will work. In the last few years, we've made several field trips out where we've met some cool people doing great projects. So climb aboard, let's take a little ride. Figure out the things that you can do and the things that you should do to create the very, very best bass bluegill fishing lake on your property.
Kelly Hart, holy cow, so good to see you, my friend. What a great job you guys have done out here. You personally, because you've taken charge of this whole thing. Mike Otto wanted to come see what you've done, and so did I. So
welcome.
Thank you very kindly.
Yeah, appreciate you letting us come out here, number one. And number two, when Bob says you did a great job out here, he's about guessing. You know, he don't really know. I'm just kidding. I do this for a living. Yeah, you spent some time, some money. You had some people that knew what they were doing, and I'd be glad to show this kind of work to anybody I've seen. So,
well, thank you. What were the things you did well?
Oh wow. I feel like we did a really good job with our habitat, and we'll probably take a closer look at that in a bit. But we had to kind of scrounge around for some trees, so I wish I had set back more of that initial clearing timber to have available for my fish structure.
Okay.
Granted, we had some obstacles there around burn piles that burned that we didn't intend to burn, but I wish I had set back more of that and been thinking 6 months ahead. I didn't do that as well as I wish I could have. We came up with plenty of timber, but some trees we had to take down just so we could use them for habitat.
And those were up the creek.
And those are,
not easy to get to.
So there's a lot of take-home points to look at here. Kelly Hart did an outstanding job of implementing his habitat plan. So what you see here is you see a number of different things like spawning beds there. Behind the spawning beds, there's brush piles. That's where baitfish love to go in and hide when they're small. To the right, you see that drop-off? Bass love that. They're going to be hanging out there. As you come around, there's a teepee, then there's a PVC pipe, a rock, sitting next to a root ball and next to a tree where bass are going to hang out. So that's all good pieces of a community. That right there will attract all kinds of bait fish as well as big fish. And right there where those guys are standing, Mike and Kelly, imagine a big bass hanging out right there. No, wait, more. And how did he anchor? He used Wolf Fang anchors, driven into the ground with a special tool and cabled that stuff down so it doesn't float. I love this feature. This is where I'm talking about using what nature offers. He left that underwater bluff that's going to end up being an island. Spawning beds, PVC to attract bait fish, all bring together a community where fish can live and the anglers can enjoy the heck out of it. They're walking by a big spawning bed on a flat. There's another spawning bed adjacent to a brush pile where baby bait fish, when they're first hatched, remember, they're $1,200 per pound or $12,000 per pound. If they give them 45 days of safe haven, then they turn into a really good nugget. So overall, this lake has got about 25 to 30% of its basin covered with habitat, and it's perfect. Remember also, habitat's in layers. You're looking at the upper layer, which is the littoral zone, then you're looking at things in the middle. See those piles of dirt there? They're going to be in water 20 feet deep and they come up to water about 12 to 13 feet deep. So overall, this is outstanding. Great spillway, where excess water can be released from a big watershed. The overflow pipe handles water from normal rainfalls, but when you look at the whole picture, this is an outstanding lake design with an outstanding plan, and he fulfills the plan. So now all he needs is just a little bit of water, and we're ready for fish. Next, we head over to East Texas to meet up with Corey Simmons, who lives in Hallsville and bought some property down south of there for a hunting and fishing weekend destination. So here's Corey.
We bought this property I spent probably 10 years looking for the property that I wanted. And I would spend hours just looking at the topography and everything before I ever set foot on the property. And this one laid out perfectly for the pond, but also had a nice natural travel corridor for deer, and so it's set up really nicely for deer hunting as well. So we've got timber that's getting cut and cleared for a food plot up here on a ridge that leads down to a south food plot that'll be about 4 acres. So total we'll have about 7 acres of food plots, 5 acres of water, and just a little 80-acre oasis. So top of the dam's 24 feet. And then we've got our spillway 2.5 feet below that. And then our siphon pipe will be 18 inches below that spillway. So the siphon pipe will handle, 90% of everything that happens in the pond. And then the emergency spillway will be here
for big catchment,
yeah. So we ended up with a 40-foot wide emergency spillway. So this lake is about 5.5 acres. Depth at the deepest point is going to be about 20 feet. I'd say on average we're somewhere around that 12-foot average because we do have a lot of deeper water on the south end of the lake, or the dam end of the lake. Overall, the dam is about 24 feet tall, about 450 feet long, so we've had to move a lot of dirt through this project.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Good,
that is fantastic.
Very good, very good.
You've done this.
Yeah, he's as good as you are now. In fact,
that's really good.
You can go sit in the truck if you need to.
Yeah. I'm going to go play solitaire on my phone.
450 feet long, 24 feet high at the tallest point. So we had quite a bit of dirt that we had to pull out. In some cases had to haul in, in other cases we're able to find what we had here. So we just kind of used what we had and made the best of what we had in the area. The creek here runs through the pond, and what ended up is all the clay that we needed was up here along this creek. Well, what ended up being pretty good about this is that they actually dug below the level of the creek, and we created a channel right here that comes down. So you've got the slope that comes down from the the water line comes down to that 3-foot shelf again, then drops off, and then we've got a sheer bluff down the middle. So we did get a little bit of rain this last weekend, and you can see a lot of the erosion where they've kind of shaped the sides. So now that's kind of coming in. So we've got to come in to our spawning beds. There's a few of them that have a lot of sand in it, so we'll have to clean those out a little bit, put some silt fence up just until it comes up. But
really cool. You made really nice little spawning beds here, a row of them.
Point was just to have little groupings as we went down, so it's not just random anywhere. You can go from one set to the next set to the next set to the next set to actually fish. So when we look for a property, we really took a lot of time looking at topography, looking at the layout of the land, to make sure that when we built a pond, we had the right terrain to create the structure that we wanted. So we didn't want a lot of shallow water. We didn't want to have to dig a lot of dirt out and haul it away. So we wanted to be able to use everything that we had here. So as we came in here and found this property, it really set up well. So as we built, what we created was layers of structure as we go into the pond. So we start out at the water's edge, we drop down to about 3 feet fairly quickly to get out of that real shallow water, and then from that standpoint we created beds for bluegills. We added structure for the bluegills so they have a place to hang out. The next layer was the areas for bass to hang out and feed on those bluegills and everything, and then some deeper water structure that allows the bass in the summertime to get into some deeper water and feel more comfortable. So those were all the things that we thought about as we were creating this pond, and the concept of the pond that we created throughout this whole process.
Big round of applause and our hats off to Corey Simmons. Started working with Corey about 2 years ago, and we had lots of conversations about this. He did the due diligence to build his dam, which you need to do too if you're going to build a lake. But then as he got into the really fun part, the segment about habitat, as you can see from this video, he thought about it in layers. And all those layers start off with spawning beds. So what he's done is he's created these underwater communities and tied them all together with edge cover, channels, and other transitions. So he took the spawning beds, and then around the spawning beds he created places where young, newly hatched fish can hide, hang out, and places that bass can ambush from. So when you start looking at these channels and you look at the PVC pipe, he did that so it would be kid friendly. So you can go out there in a boat, hang over those PVC pipe structures, dangle a worm under a bobber, and catch a big bluegill. But when you tie all these things together, he looked at the levels just like you should, where you're going to create things around the edge, and then you're going to create edges underwater, and you're going to create all the different types of habitat to create underwater communities for your fish. He's got things that are difficult to fish in. He's got things that are easy to fish in. But as you look right here, you can see those vertical layers where he's got the edge, then a 3-to-1 slope from 3 feet down to deeper. Then he's got all kinds of fish, 6 flags over black bass right here in this lake. And you can do the same thing with yours with the right amount of planning and the right amount of implementation. So I tell you what, you guys think these things through, figure it out, plan it out. Don't be afraid to take some time, and you can have a great fishing lake as well. Here's some ideas that people have done that you may want to do. Now, your take-home point here is you want 25 to 30% of your pond's bottom covered with habitat elements that include everything that you have available. Work with nature first, but here's some other ideas. now let's travel across the country a little bit, because lakes are where you find them.
Big
We're going
muddy.
to talk about some things to do to finish strong, and maybe even some things you shouldn't do at all. So let's take another road trip, see what we can find.
Yeah, got some blue.
On this next adventure, we travel south of Vicksburg, Mississippi, to consult with some landowners of a hunting ranch there. They had built this beautiful dam, taken a lot of the dirt to build the dam from the far end of it, which you will see shortly. But my mission to consult with them was about their habitat for the fish. So as we came across the dam, they had told me that there was quite a bit more habitat than they thought they needed. But one of the landowners that's helping on this says he's so used to fishing in standing dead timber that he wanted to leave all of it. But now, as you drive across this, most of the time when you see this much stuff in the bottom of a lake, you think it's all about the back side of the lake. It's not. This is the inside of the lake. So there's a couple of brush piles. Those are okay. I'm okay with that. But here's some things that you got to consider. You want 25 to 30% of the lake basin with some kind of fish habitat, not 100%. So there's several issues with a lake like this. If you leave all this standing stuff in the basin, first of all, it's random for fish. There's too much organic matter that's going to decompose in the water and cause water quality issues. So my advice to these guys was to come in and start taking some out. Grind some down, get rid of it, move it out, and see if you can't start creating some channels. It was going to cost too much money to move all that stuff out of that lake basin, but they could at least cut some big channels in it and some avenues and alleyways for boats to be able to travel. So this is a classic case where too much is way too much, and they needed to reduce it a lot. Well, let's spin out of here and head over to Northeastern Oklahoma for the next stop of the day and see what we've got going on there. Yeah, they did. They had to build a road and kind of create their logistics to get in and out. There's a pretty big creek right here that they wanted to avoid and stay away from. And right around this bend, it's start opening up and you'll find the first lake here. This is outside of Beggs, Oklahoma. And it's funny how the backside slope of this dam looks a lot different than the backside slope of the last one we looked at.
They didn't dress it up very much, but it is just as gentle, so to speak.
Okay.
I got a lot of water, you know.
When we pulled up on top of this dam, it was obvious that it's not finished. The backside slope has not been harrowed yet. The top wasn't smooth. It still needed some compaction, so we knew the earth mover was going to come back. But in the meantime, our mission today was to look at the habitat. Love the rock piles, love that abrupt drop, love the trees coming down. As we circle through, you see another big brush pile. That's going to be a little tough to fish in. It's a little bit too big. Now you can get a perspective when you see Mike walking down in the bottom of the lake. Now that abrupt drop-off is very fruitful for fish. Now one of the things with these underwater humps is there's nothing to enhance them. Plus they're going to be in water about 18 to 20 feet deep. So this habitat plan is partially finished. It needs more. It needs some more wood. It needs some more piles. It needs some more underwater brush. So one of the things we're going to do when we talk to the landowner about this one is a way to finish strong. He's got a bunch of root balls, the trees back in the background. The water's going to back up on some of those. So now we're at a point where we need to have that conversation. I pointed out where the structure that he has is excellent, but it's incomplete. There's no bluegill spawning beds. There's no cover vertically down far enough in the water. So he needs to make a few changes, and he's really good with that. Then we went to the second lake, and as we were looking at that lake talking about it, there were a number of things. There's too much standing timber. That stuff needs to be thinned out. It's not nearly as effective as people think it is. It might hold some fish for a while, but it doesn't hold fish forever because it deteriorates. Then as we pan to the right, you can see all that area that's going to be underwater. It's way too shallow. It needs to build some peninsulas and make it deeper. And he can build some islands if he'd like, or even spoil some dirt by pushing it up on top of the shoreline to create like a green belt or a lawn. So there's a number of things to do to make that shallow water much deeper, and that needs to happen. Next, let's head over to Hope, Arkansas and meet up with Lloyd Smith, his running buddy Drew, and his son Andrew. They've got a 25-acre lake site with a big creek running right through the middle of it. They weren't able to get heavy equipment down in the creek to remove a bunch of this brush, so they decided to leave it standing. Now, a big part of the basin of the lake is really flat and shallow, and they've had to deepen it. So in that some of that shallow flat, they decided to take some of the timber that they cut off the property and enhance it. So here's a kind of a tic-tac-toe board looking gadget. Now, how did they build these things? There's some of that flat water that's only going to be about 6 feet deep. So they stacked it up like so, had root balls, then they anchored it really cool by driving saplings way down into the dirt and then hammering nails in them to kind of hold them down so they don't float away. Pretty darn effective. Now, what they do with some of the shallow water, they took it, created some peninsulas, and built some spawning shelves all around the lake. That's a real efficient way to take shallow water and make it much deeper. So there you have it. 23-plus minute whirlwind tour around 5 different projects where you met 5 different people to see what they were up to. There's a lot of take-home points from this video. First of all, make a plan. You need a habitat plan for all species and all sizes of those species. Remember, nature is not random. Think about that. As your plan comes together, some of it can be planned in advance, but some needs to be done as the project develops. Dirt moving, adjusting the site, things will reveal themselves to you as the dirt gets moved. So be light on your feet and be ready to adjust. Study your underwater topography to get a feel for how your lake basin lies. Be sure and flag the shoreline so you can visualize where the water level will be. Look at it over and over and over till you really get it. Consider the wind direction. Currents are going to form. You may want to build peninsulas to adjust to that wind, that current action. Create a community, mostly water less than 8 feet deep. Use what nature offers. Get rid of shallow water. Build points, underwater humps. Add all those elements. Do it in layers. Very important. Where you put habitat makes a big difference as to whether the fish will use it. You want to cover 25 to 30% of the lake basin. That's enough to create a good community. Spawning beds. Put those on top of geotech cloth. Add gravel so it doesn't sink down into the mud. Be sure you have adjacent structure for tiny fish and add fluffy structure for bigger fish. Travel paths, cuts, channels, underwater humps, then accessorize all these with fish attraction devices. If you do that, you're going to have an outstanding fishing lake that you can enjoy for a long time. Hey, remember Corey Simmons Lake? Since we first shot video, he's gotten some rain. He's been able to bring the fish truck in, stock some bait fish, some forage fish, got them going, and now he's not too far away from having his fishing lake. Since that point, it rained even a little bit more and filled it up some more, and that's what it looks like now. So get ready, because it won't be long until you're going to have the lake of your dreams with a great habitat plan.
Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me how. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, let's do it now. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, you're the one that makes fishing so much fun. Well, hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what I need to raise a big old honking moss back. Line breaking, tack tearing up moss back. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.